restarting. When a migrant is attempting to get papers in the United States, it takes 10 or 20 years sometimes. It's a long process. There's a lot of submissions. It takes a lot of money, attorneys. There's a lot of delays. It's basically, ICE is like DMV on steroids. It's really messy. It's bureaucracy. So in the meantime, during those 10 or 20 years, as the clock is ticking, people are living, loving, laughing, working, making families, having jobs, finding their favorite pizza places, coaching basketball. These are our neighbors. There's 130,000 estimated undocumented people in Connecticut. Undocumented doesn't mean it doesn't have papers. It just means they don't have their final paper. So when ICE says that they're going to come and sweep, it means all of those people can be taken away. Those are moms, dads, kids. And so our job as people who believe in social justice is to do all that we can to stand up to protect our communities. So first of all, thank you so much for coming. If you're just signing on, please introduce yourself in the chat with your name, your agency, and definitely your town. And now I just want to introduce the gracious co-sponsors of this training. Susan Harris is here. She's on the steering committee for the Coordinated Food Assistance Network. She's a leading force behind the good work that CFAN does in Greater New Haven. And she's just going to say a few words about CFAN and how you can get in touch with them.
Thank you, Charla. Hi, everybody, and welcome. So wonderful to have such an outpouring of interest in our webinar, and I want to thank B and Carol and Kate as our co-hosts for hosting us and introducing what we have to look forward to coming up. But I'm just here to tell you a little bit about CFAN. As Charlotte said, CFAN is the Coordinated Food Assistance Network. We represent over 40 food assistance programs, consumer advocacy groups, and partnering organizations. CFAN envisions a unified system of food assistance that ensures equitable, dignified, and culturally appropriate access to nutritious foods for all residents of Greater New Haven. We also have several working groups. We have an advocacy group. We have a training group, which Charlotte and I are members of, this is the production of, said training group. We also have a universal intake group, which is for food pantry providers they're trying to get a card system where when your clients come, they'll have one card that swipes, that registers at all the pantries. So your clients don't have to, keep repeating the same information every time they go to a pantry. We also have school break groceries, which is another group that when the New Haven schools are out of session, a group of us get together and put together grocery bags to feed the children and their families during the vacations. And we also have a healthy food procurement work group, which is the group of pantries as well as CARE, which is the Community Alliance for Research and Engagement out of Southern Connecticut State University that works very closely with CFAN and getting together because fruits and vegetables, as we all know, are very expensive, especially when you're buying them in quantities as the food providers do, and they don't always have the funds to provide them or, the storage space to store them if they're only open, say, once a month. So the Healthy Food Procurement Work Group is working to help the providers provide more fruits and vegetables, and that's just started, so there'll be more on that in the future. If you're interested in joining us, please, we'd love to have you. If you're based in the New Haven area, and I will give you a gentleman's name, Mike Deegan from United Way, who coordinates all our parts and moving parts, and I'll leave his email in the chat if you'd like to join one of our meetings. We meet the first Thursday of every month from 2 to 3 on Zoom. So I'll just leave it there and take it away, Charlotte.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Susan. And thanks for the great work that you do. As everyone knows, food is a big part of social justice work. and CFAN does an amazing job. The other co-sponsor is Connecticut Shoreline Indivisible. We're part of a national movement to empower people to reclaim democracy. There's independent chapters throughout the country. You can find your local chapter by looking at indivisible.org. We do all that we can to support marginalized people, and Ginny King and I support in the Connecticut Shoreline Indivisible Immigration Group and any other people that we can. So those are the co-sponsors. And now we have Kica Matos. Quick introduction. Kica is the president of the National Immigration Law Center, or NILC. It's an agency at the national level that's charged with advancing and defending the rights of low-income immigrant community and securing lasting transformational change. She's an advocate for immigration reform for many, many decades, working with the Vera Institute, the Vera Institute of Justice, and the Center for Community Change. Locally, she's been New Haven's deputy mayor, the executive director of Junta. She's worked with NAACP, National Legal Defense. Simply put, she's a really amazing badass, and we're grateful that you're able to join us today, Kica. So follow her on Google and see what's happening locally and nationally and what you can do on the immigrant rights front. Take it away, Kica.
Thank you so much, Charla. Can you hear me okay? And good afternoon, everybody. I should say I also live in New Haven, Connecticut, and will be very involved in the fight that's ahead of us, not just at the national level, but also specifically in New Haven and Connecticut. I just wanted to share a few reflections to talk about the moment that we're in and the importance of every single person on this call. Look, it's not an exaggeration to say that we are about to confront one of the most challenging times in our nation's history when it comes to immigration. And we need to be ready for what is likely to unfold just 4 days from now. Here's what we expect. We expect that almost immediately after the inauguration, there will be a series of executive orders that will unfold that afternoon and the following days. What is likely to be contained in executive orders? First, we're going to see the first wave of executive orders will be canceling every pro-immigration executive order Biden advanced during his 4 years. That will be followed by executive orders saying, okay, now we got rid of all of the good immigration stuff. This is what's going to be replaced. So we expect that there will be executive orders in place that will make it easy for mass deportations to be carried out. So anyone in this country who does not have status will be subject to deportation. We expect that they're going to cancel a policy around sensitive locations that prohibited ICE action in places like hospitals and places of worships and schools. So that is likely also to be canceled, which means that we should expect ICE activity even in the most sensitive and sacred of spaces. We should expect that they're going to try to repeal birthright citizenship and prohibit, for example, parents who try to get passports for their kids or put in place measures that will make it virtually impossible for people to access documentation that proves citizenship. And then for those of us at the local level and jurisdictions like New Haven and states like Connecticut that are immigration friendly, we should also expect executive orders that will threaten these jurisdictions with withdrawal and prohibition of federal funding if they continue to support immigrants. Why? Because the administration understands that the two things that they need to carry out the mass deportation agenda is a lot of money and help at the local and state level. So that's just a brief description of some of the things that are going to be in front of us. And I will also say that their answer to family separation is to say, we will carry out family separation, which will include deporting US citizen children. And so I just want to sketch out some of what we should anticipate in the coming weeks and to really emphasize that we not only need to be prepared, but all of us need to be courageous. We need to do everything that we can to support our immigrant communities. Immigrants in this city in whatever city you're in the state of Connecticut, will rely on us to do everything we can to be protective and to be supportive. So I just want to say to everybody on this call, thank you for being here. Please throw down with us. Let us be a force of fierce and courageous resistance in the next 4 years, because at the end of the day, it's not going to be just about immigrants. It's going to be about our democracy, because as I've said before, and I will continue to say it, the path to authoritarianism in this country is going to be built on the backs of immigrants. So being vigilant and fighting back is not just about protecting immigrants, but it's also about protecting our democracy. And with that, I'm going to turn it back over to Charla.
Oh, thank you so much, Kica. And I think that's so powerful. I've heard you say that before, because we know they're not just coming for immigrants, they're coming for Muslims, they're coming for LGBTQ people, they're coming for women, they're coming. So, our job is to get ready for this. This is going to be a marathon. It's not a sprint. We got to band together and protect our communities. So towards that end, we have B Perryman here. She's part of ACLU. She's been burning the candle at both ends and probably other sides as well. And the several months that I've known her, and I'm sure for that, she's as the communication director. She's the face that you'll see at town halls and trainings. And behind the scenes, she's networking and calling people to make sure they're okay. And she's updating ACLU materials. Absolutely fabulous. Take it away, B.
Hi, everyone. Thank you all. I want to take a minute to just sit with what Kica has just shared with us. I think these are this is exactly the same guidance as ACLU. There was also a question in the chat from Jeffrey about municipalities. I'll answer in just a second. But I do think I want to echo what you've just said, Kica, that this is a time where we are facing monumental challenges as communities, as people, as municipalities, as states, and certainly as a country. So I'm going to talk and go through a few things. I will take questions. I should have some time for questions, and any question is okay. It doesn't just have to be about immigration, but that's our topic of today. I have a PowerPoint and then some links I'd like to share. And so I'm going to go ahead and share my screen, which means I won't be able to see the folks on the screen. So Charlotte, if there's an issue or anything, you'll have to pop off mute and just let me know. But I think, let's see if I can do this maybe. Yes, that should work. Okay, so I should be able to share my screen and then start my PowerPoint. Okay, so can everyone see me and the PowerPoint?
Yeah,
Okay,
that's really fancy.
Great. I try really hard, guys. I try to make all of this as accessible for all of us, but you are correct, Charlotte. I don't want to say I'm burning the candle at both ends. I like to say when people tell me that the pace is too much and it's a lot, I try to say things like, I don't know if you've ever heard of the concept of meeting the moment, but this is what we absolutely have to do right now. And all of you on this call are doing exactly that. I'm from the ACLU of Connecticut. That is the American Civil Liberties Union. Most of you know what we do, but very quickly, my name is Bethany. Everyone calls me B. I'm the Director of Communications. So you should also know, I am not a lawyer, so this is not legal advice. However, I'm the communications director of a law firm. So I will tell you that I have run everything I'm going to say through our legal department. But I am not a lawyer. So this is advocacy advice and not legal advice that you are getting today. But we will talk about the law. This is my personal cell phone number. You are welcome to save this phone number. You can call me or text me at any time. I'm also on LinkedIn. If you just search my name, ACLU of Connecticut on LinkedIn, you can find me there. My email is also here. Please save my number. And keep me updated on anything that you think the ACLU needs to know. We have some ideas about when things might happen and what we will be seeing in the days before. So we don't think that we will wake up and have no idea, but things will be moving very quickly. Life is happening I told Charlotte yesterday, life is happening in real time. So just please make sure that this is a line of communication. You cannot bother me. I read every email that comes in, every text. Please, feel free to, and you can call as well. I check my voicemails as well. So the ACLU, we have several sections of we are a staff of 17 in Connecticut. We are a staff of 2,200 from sea to shining sea, from the Pacific Ocean to the Atlantic Ocean to the Gulf of America. So we have lawyers, we have legislative advocates, we have public education and community experts, and we brought 430 cases, including 28 on the Muslim ban in the first Trump administration, and we are geared up to do the same thing this time. But the other thing we are doing, and we are being much more focused on this time, is this concept of civil society and building collective power. We all need one another. This is a time to feel as connected as possible, not just to your family and the people at your kitchen table, but to your neighbors and to their kitchen tables as well. And it really, this is a time where looking people in the eye, having frank conversations, talking about what we value is going to be really, really important in the days ahead. So a few things that I can ask. We have an integrated advocacy model at the ACLU. I will breeze through that. We have folks in the courthouse, in the state house, in communities like this, and in the streets. And then you have people like me that sort of go between all of those and make sure everyone knows what the other person is doing so that we can have some type of really good civil rights and liberties strategy. So what I would ask for you all to do today is to think of yourselves as members of this civil society. The resistance, we are not well funded, but we are mighty. The truth is on our side, and human decency is on our side. And so that is a way that we can build collective power. Knowing your rights in the days ahead is going to be very important. That's one of the things we're talking about today with immigration. We will have a short training about what to do and what we think we will see as far as ICE raids and ICE in our homes and businesses and even schools and churches. There are basically 3 types of ways that a person who cares about things can help out. That is by knowing an issue or a group, or a subject area and advocating for that. Most of you on the call do that, right? In your whatever your area is or your organization. Allyship is taking that one step further and doing something like this, coming onto a call, making sure you know your rights, that you are connected with folks, and that you have stood up as a sort of community pillar and saying, I will comport myself in accordance with democratic norms, and I will stand up for civil rights, and I will make sure that immigrants feel welcome in my community and neighborhood. Being an accomplice is one step further. Those are people that put their bodies between marginalized people and the problem, whatever the problem is. So, sometimes it is police violence, sometimes it is hate speech, sometimes it is bad legislation, sometimes it is a court case, right? It could be any sort of thing. So being an advocate, an ally, or an accomplice really, and you can be one or any number of those things, but it really, it's more about your comfortability existing in those spaces. And the anti-racist training that we do, that white people do as an accomplice, the guidance is to put your body between, immigrants in this case and the problem, which would be ICE. So in this training, one of the things I will tell you is if you are going to do that, there is a certain way to do that that makes it a lot easier for people who are being taken away from their families to get brought back to their families. Whereas there's a way to do that that contributes chaos to a situation that is designed to be chaotic and disenfranchising, right? So what we're going to do today is train ourselves to understand what that looks like, right? We have many people that are strong of heart and want to bar the door when someone comes and does these things. But what we know is that there are better legal and real material outcomes for folks when certain protocols are followed. So that's what we will do today. Very quickly, also, the other thing I will tell you, one of the best ways to make sure that you are checking the inner tyrant and the outer tyrant, right? Like the justice shackled is like this poetic word for the coming of tyranny, right? So when you think about the injustices in the world and how they affect you, you need to write down your values, physically write them down, know what they are, hold yourself accountable for them, and hold your community accountable for their values. They don't always have to be exactly the same values, right? But if we lead our actions from a value perspective, we have a lot more clarity, a lot more psychological space, and a lot more capacity to hold these things, because we will see some real harm for people and communities that we care about. And so that is a really good way to sort of find some of that sanity in a time that is designed to make you feel insane. Again, when we're talking during this training, we will talk about the difference in risk and civic action, right? You have to make a risk calculus to find out what level of allyship and accompliceship that you are ready, that you can. Yes, Carol.
Yeah, sorry to interrupt you, B. Two things. One is there are several people who have come in under one name several people have come in under one name. The name they are coming in under is Liza Estevez. If you are not Liza, please go in and rename yourself so we know who's here. That's the first. And second, B, we're finding several people are commenting. We can see you as a speaker, but when you're speaking, when you've got your face superimposed over your slide, we can't see the bottom of it. So if you can change the settings so you're just a speaker, that's perfect.
Let me go back. Hold on. Let me see if I can.
That would be great. Some people are saying, wait a second.
No problem. And we will
it's very cool.
We will share these slides.
It's very cool.
Hey,
but yes, this is great.
Today is not about being cool. Today is about being effective.
But that's great. Thank you. Which is why you'll see in the chat, a lot of people then put in your email address was because it was blocked. So that's perfect. Thank you. And yes, Liza, we know you probably shared the invite. If people would just go ahead and rename themselves, that would be great. Unless you and your 10 alter egos are all on the call, in which event, forget what I just said.
Yeah, in which case, welcome.
Welcome to everybody, of course, but please go in and rename yourself. Thank you. Sorry to interrupt you, B.
It's okay. I thought you were going to say Liza Minnelli, and I was really excited for a moment.
Hey, sing a few bars. All right.
We've got a lot of superstars on the call. So
yes, thank you, B. Sorry to interrupt.
No problem at all. So functionally, when we talk about this training, we will be talking about risk and civic action, and that is where you need to calculate, right, what level of risk that you are willing to take for your community, and you need to be okay with it. Some people will be able to take on more risk than others. And you just need to be very real about that, because again, we are moving into a time that is designed to be chaotic and scary. And the more internal regulation and sanity that you have, the better that these outcomes will be for the most vulnerable people, right? And that's who it's really about. Again, and then so my last two things before we really dig into this is the information environment that you are in will be very important. For example, we had a question in the chat earlier about municipalities and some guidance from the Attorney General. Who you decide is an authority figure and how their authority is carried out is going to be very important, because a lot of people that you might not think are legitimate authorities on things, especially with the degradation of the administrative state, will claim to be authority on a thing, and where you get your information, who you are listening to, these are all going to be very important. The more psychological space that you have for critical thinking, and for right action and correct action, the more you will be able to be effective in helping those who need the most help. And then my last thing I've been telling everyone is be gentle on people, but very hard on systems, right? We want to be gentle on one another and our communities, and not, we don't want to ask too much or ask not enough. We don't want to let things go that are unjust. But the way that we do that is being gentle in our communities and being hard on systems. And people have different thresholds and different abilities, and we want to make sure that we are very aware of that as we move into a time that's going to be very difficult for a lot of us, and for communities in their entirety. So next, I want to talk very quickly about what immigration looks like in Connecticut, and then we will move into some practical tips. First, we have a new Immigrants' Rights and Resources Guide. I will share the link in the chat. It is also on this PowerPoint. it is constantly updated. The most recent update was last week. It is several pages. It has answers to questions like what we will think we will see on January 20th, which echoes exactly what Kica said. It also has how to make a family preparedness plan, what the different types of statuses are, right? And who might have them. And then some functional things like red cards that you can print out. We'll talk about red cards in a moment. So immigration is under federal law. So we are a federated nation of 50 states, and our states are sovereign, meaning we have our own constitutions. Luckily, in Connecticut, our state constitution protects more classes of people than the federal constitution, which is not so in many states. And so in Connecticut, we have as good of a picture as anywhere else, and better than most places. But it is still, immigration is one of the things that is delegated that is completely within the remit of federal law. Things like interstate commerce are as well. But most of our laws and how we treat one another is left up to the states. And so in Connecticut, we are in a fairly decent position as far as that goes. The Trust Act was passed in 2013, updated in 2019, and we're trying to update it this year. It is an 8-page piece of legislation, double-spaced. So you should go read it. You can just Google Connecticut Trust Act and read it. It is the immigration law and the regulations that we are able to have in our state. And what it mostly does is direct state and municipal police forces to not cooperate with ICE, Immigrations and Customs Enforcement, which is a federal agency, and it's different than a police force. And so state and local police under the Trust Act in Connecticut, right, cannot cooperate with ICE. They cannot detain people for ICE. They cannot share certain information with ICE. And if there's someone in custody in a municipal or state jail, they cannot, or in police custody, excuse me, they cannot allow ICE to speak with them. They cannot do things, for example, like block traffic so that ICE can go raid a place, right? Like ICE has to do that for itself. And we are working on, I don't have it to debut today, but we are working on a hotline where you can call in if there are Trust Act violations, and be able to leave a message and to be able to talk with a lawyer or talk with someone that might be able to help with that. After the election, the ACLU nationally and in Connecticut, we're doing this thing called Firewalls for Freedoms, and in cities, it's Cities of Light. And we have some requests for making sure that we don't participate in fusion centers, things like that. Connecticut, we have a pretty decent picture, and the Attorney General and law enforcement have been going around the state and having town halls and talking about how police will not cooperate with ICE. But what is also happening in those town halls, I've attended several of them, is when people ask questions like, can ICE go into a school, right? The answer is very cagey, which what I would take that to mean is that the answer is likely yes. Now they have to meet certain requirements to do that, and we'll talk about what those are. But we should expect to see if ICE is in the state in force, right? We should expect to see them in places like food banks, churches, hospitals, and schools. At the ACLU, we are working with a coalition of folks and folks at Yale Law School as well in the YRAC clinic to write some legislation to strengthen the Trust Act. And we are working on that literally as we speak. We have weekly updates on that. So I should have an update probably in March. The bill or bills will be introduced here in the next few weeks. We're also having Know Your Rights convenings just like this one. We're having town halls all over the state. I really encourage you to follow ACLU CT on any social media. We're not on Red Note yet, the new one. We are on Blue Sky. We're on Blue Sky, but not Red Note. But we are on TikTok, Instagram, LinkedIn, all the things. And if you find me on LinkedIn, also you can get to ACLU from all of there. But our website is updated constantly, as are our socials. And and we lift up other organizations in the state that are doing this work as well. So I hope that you will join us there. this is what our document looks like, our immigrants' rights and resources. This is a QR code. I'll leave it up here for a moment, but I will put the link in the chat. It is also on the front page of our website. If you go to the front page, there's a carousel right there. Immigrants' rights is the first one on the left, and it goes directly to this document. And as you can see, last updated January 8th at 8 p.m. We think there are days where we have to update it several times a day. So whatever version you have says so right at the top. So you'll know that you have the most updated version. So if I'm going to move now into the training portion. Are there any questions? And Jeffrey, I do have your question about municipalities, but I'll answer that in a moment. Are there any other questions before we move into sort of the step-by-step training of what happens?
Yeah, so I'll just read off some of them that have been in the chat.
Sure.
Pam is saying, when I Google the Trust Act, there's a lot of good information, but would love to know if there's a definitive document that might be the best to review.
Sure.
Charlotte, sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead. Go ahead.
And a lot of people are really just putting in a lot of their information, which is fabulous.
Here's our immigrants' rights and resources document in the chat. This is the most recent PDF. And then I'm also sending in the chat now this is just the link to the page so you can see the most updated version. Now, I will also tell you, this guidance that I'm giving you today could change as early as Monday afternoon. But we're doing this now, and I will pop on a Zoom. I will do this 100 times if we have to, if things change. And we will do the same one multiple times if we need to for folks, whatever works. Let me find the Trust Act for you all.
Okay, and then
if Charlotte and Carol ask me to do something, I do it. So I will always be here. Let's see.
And Charla has answered Jeffrey's question. What's Firewalls for Freedom? Charlotte's answered it. We're part of the firewall protecting our communities.
Yes, and we also have, I'll put this in this also we are working on updating. As you can tell, I've really prioritized being with people and talking with people the last week or so. So I haven't updated our website as much. I have debuted a hand-coded legislative tracker, but that's different. But I put our Firewall for Freedom link. Oh, I just direct message it to you, Carol. I'm sorry. I've been
Yes, you did.
This.
Okay. But I also want to point out that for folks who are on this call, there are groups all over the state hosting ACLU Connecticut, hosting B-Ray, hosting AD Tong. These informational sessions are happening everywhere. And so if you are not connected to one of your local groups, they are either, I'll just call them opposition groups. But I'm about to put our email into the chat. It's CT Shoreline Indivisible @gmail.com. And we will get you connected to whichever groups are in your area that we're aware of.
And then we have town halls in Danbury, Greenwich, Bridgeport, and there's the link to those also.
Didn't the Bridgeport one already happen?
No, it's on the 30th. That was with the AG. We're doing we've got our own road show going because we show up to the AG's ones also to make sure that folks know that we're there, but we have our own ones. Okay, let me reshare my screen here. Let me see how to do that. Okay, so let's move into the sort of training portion. So I have this in English and in Spanish.
Okay.
And I'm working on a visual guide. Our designer's working on it right now. So if ICE agents show up at your door, this is for a home. You don't have to open the door and you have to, be calm, you have rights. This is the same at a business. However, if they show you a warrant, at some point this becomes like a public space where there's people, so you do have to let them in libraries, things like that. So you ask, the first thing is staying calm is the name of the game. If you can stay calm and stay quiet, that is 100% of 90% of what will make it to where you and your community has legal recourse. So ask what they are there for. And if folks don't speak English, you can ask for an interpreter. After that, if they ask to enter, ask if they have a warrant that is signed by a judge and have them slide it under the door, or if you or show you on a window. If you're not opening the door to your business, they can put it on like a window and show you. The warrant needs to be signed by a judge. An administrative ICE warrant is not a legal reason to enter a facility. They will, the reason people end up having legal recourse against ICE is because ICE does not often comport themselves with the law. So you should just know that anything they tell you, we have suspicion, we have this, it may or may not be true. You cannot, like, at that point, if ICE comes to your door, the first thing you need to remember is you are living in your reality and what you know to be true. And whatever they tell you, like, you just can't, it may be true, it may not be true. You have no reason to believe one way or the other. Which again is why we tell people to just try and stay as calm as possible. They will be yelling, they'll be banging on the door, you know, it's a whole thing. If they try to force their way in, you know, I wouldn't say go ahead and let them in. The Attorney General is telling people to comply. What I would say is don't resist in that situation, and tell everyone to stay quiet and have people, you know, to be quiet. If they come to a person and ask them for their papers, ask them whatever, they don't have to say a word. If they ask them their name, they do have to provide their name. They have a few questions you can ask beforehand, like, am I being detained or do you have a warrant? But at that point, if they're inside your business, they will likely have already shown you their warrant. But that is the one thing you do need to provide. That's the guidance from the ACLU, is that you do need to provide your name. But that is all you have to do. After that, you can say, I invoke my right to remain silent and do not speak to anyone and do not sign anything. Do not sign, do not sign anything. I also have this. This is from United We Dream, but this is one that I've used in town halls. It's very good. This is sort of a visual guide, right? Just remain silent, do not sign anything, do not answer any questions until you can talk with a lawyer and find a way to get in touch with a lawyer. So that, and we can go through that again slower in however we want to do that. That is the guidance for when folks, you know, and I will take questions here in a second. But the other thing that I will tell you is a little bit of preparation goes a long way. So what I have talked to business people in my personal and professional capacity all over the state. And one of the things that I tell them, and I'm starting to talk to more of them, one of the things I tell them is have a conversation with yourself and your employees, whether or not you have undocumented people employed, right? That's not even, you just have to assume that they will come for it. That's the whole thing, right? When a federal enforcement agency thinks that they have authority somewhere, they will exercise it. And we have to assume that as of Monday, we have a hostile federal government. It's a very unfortunate time. And it's, you know, for those of us that love this country, it's very sad.
Excuse me, B, I have a question, and I think it's other people have asked. So let's say I'm working at a food pantry or a clinic and somebody comes in and they're in plain clothes. So I don't know really who they are, but they say they're an ICE agent and that they need to, they're doing a raid. So the first thing I do, I assume, is ask for identification. Is that right?
You can. The other thing you can, yes, you would ask for some type of identification. Right now, we are not anticipating seeing a bunch of plain clothes. Like the thing that I don't think they're going to try to trick people. Like the whole point is to show force.
Okay.
And the other thing is that and Kica may be able to talk more about this as well. One of the other things that we are seeing is, there's one detention center in Rhode Island that might open, like it's not even open right now. And there are not really detention centers open near here. Now, we've seen people like in Georgia get taken to Texas in 2018, in 2016 under Obama. So like we've seen these things happen. But we think at the ACLU that we will be seeing staging of these agents. Like they'll have to come to town, right? And they don't really do that super quietly. And we think we will see places that they will be taking people. So we should have hopefully a day or two to sort of let people know that we're anticipating seeing this. Yes, Susan. Yes, ma'am.
A couple of people asked this in the chat, but I was also wondering, now you say if they come with a warrant, number one, how do you know it's a real warrant? And how would you know if it's a judge's signature or not? And
So that is a great question. They can look a lot of different ways. Let me also, before I forget, I want to share, can I just share my whole screen and do this? Yeah. So what I want to share with you is the red card. Oh, it's hard to do this. There we go. So these are red cards that they're in the Immigrants' Rights and Resources document. They're also at redcardorders.com. They are at ILRC, is another place that has them for free. And I will put this in the chat. But these are also in our document. These are in English and in Spanish in our document. They are in 25 languages at redcardorders.com. But this is what you put on the door, right? Like, I do not wish to speak with you. I do not wish to answer.
B, we're not seeing that. Go on to your 9th slide. We're just seeing that front slide of yours.
Oh, interesting. Hold on. I can just put them in the chat here. This is what they look like. The ILRC has them, if you can.
Yep, you've put the link there in the chat for people who want to see it. You had it there. We just weren't, it just was frozen on your first intro screen.
Oh, okay.
Or on the We're There With You screen.
Oh, interesting. Let me see if I can.
So in answer to Deborah's question, I believe, Charla, you've ordered 500 of these red cards. Is that right?
You can just, if you just Google red cards and immigration,
yes,
it comes up, and you can get them free or you can make a donation.
Yes. This is what they look like. Where are they? This is what they look like.
There it is.
We have them in English and in Spanish in our document. If you have the document that's in the chat, if we have them in English and in Spanish, but they're in 25 languages at ilrc.org, or redcardorders.com has them as well. And they are free. You can order them, but you can also print them for free. And you can likely also even show them on your phone. I mean, like that, like it just says like, I do not wish to speak with you, and you do not have to be a citizen to have that. You do not have to be a citizen to have those rights. Those are rights afforded to residents. So the thing about the warrant is we're not really as worried about like fakes. Like, the problem is the actual federal agency. We're not really as worried about fakes. The thing is once you know, if it has a judicial signature and it'll say magistrate or judge under their signature, and it should say judicial warrant at the top as well. They can look a lot of different ways, but if it says ICE administrative warrant or just warrant right at the top, you can ask, is this a judicial warrant, whatever. You can't count on them to tell you the truth, but you can ask, and we are much less worried about copycat, like sort of things like that. And the thing is like, even if the warrant is legit or not legit, there's probably another way, or if it is legit, there's probably another way that they are likely breaking the law. Like, these are not, SEAL team, Green Beret, super trained. I don't want to disparage professionals in their jobs, but like, they are designed, their job is to be bullies and to freak people out and to take them away from their families. And it is just very unfortunate that is one of the remits of our federal government, but that's what's happening right now. So any other questions? I can show other things on the screen.
Yeah, I have a logistical question. Again, so let's say I'm at a clinic or a food pantry and somebody shows up and says they're an ICE agent and they have a warrant. If they have a warrant, do they have access to the entire building, including, let's say, offices and basements and freezers? Or do they only have access to, like, what do they have access to?
So again, I'm not a lawyer, but I've run all this through our lawyers. The lawyer answer is it depends. The advocate and person on the ground that's scared because there's someone trying to come in their business answer is I would assume that they do. I wouldn't necessarily assume that it's legal access, right? But like, I don't think if they get in the building, they're not going to go, oh, hey, can we go to the 3rd floor? Like, they just will, right. And so if you are concerned about potentially like maybe having a place for people, to stay or to corral that may or may not have different statuses, right? I'm on the record as ACLU, so I have to be careful how I talk here, but I would have a plan prior to that of where maybe those people could go that would be off of your property.
Ah, okay. So if you were to set up a drill, let's say, for your agency, then you might decide that first of all, there might be places that people could go where they wouldn't be easily identified by agents. And that might be nice. Or you're saying maybe they could go off-site and there's like a specific door they could use that would allow them to.
And that would be up to, like, as an ACLU employee, I cannot tell you to break the law, and I won't
Right.
tell you to break the law. I can tell you civil disobedience exists. And but I can tell you if you break the law, you cannot expect to be afforded constitutional protections that you would have if you don't break the law. So this is another reason for like trying to remain calm. And like it's terrible because like you're in this terrible situation. There's potentially people that have sensitive status on your property, right? And you're just letting these people in. Like it sounds like you're doing something wrong, but the best thing you can do is know what your rights are. Also, you have the right, as long as you are not obstructing their investigation in a very obvious way, because you can always prove it in court, right? You can record and should. But bearing witness and making sure people like that's the thing is what correct. You should record and you be quiet. You don't have to say a word. You can record. If they tell you you can't record, don't say a word. Yes, Susan.
As far as lawyers go, if the typical person, if you don't have any lawyers on your speed dial or whatever, is there a certain type of lawyer? Maybe get some information on a couple of lawyers and have it with you. And what type of lawyers would you recommend that?
Yeah.
It's
all in the Immigrants' Rights and Resources document. We got pages of them. Yep. We have pages of them. And the great thing about the advocacy community in Connecticut and in New England is that if you call the ACLU and we can't be the direct services lawyer, whatever, we've got 20 people you can call. If you call those 20 people and they aren't the direct services lawyer, they will help. Like that is the thing about our advocacy community is we have been for the past weeks and months coming together to make sure that everyone is talking there. I can't tell you how many listservs there are with attorneys, like waiting to, to sort of, and there are people that do immigration law as their entire practice. And we've got some of them in the document and are updating them. And Iris will have a similar document soon. It will be very much the same. I know Connecticut Students for a Dream, we do everything with them. And because they work directly, we had 7 or 8 of people at our New Haven town hall last night from their group that are young, undocumented people. And so we make sure that everything we do sort of goes through them in a way that like works for them.
So B, we have a couple of questions. One is Eric Wolf is asking, is this information the same at a business, for example, a restaurant? And then and Derek, that kind of a follow-up similar question, is it legal to coordinate efforts to track where the ICE agents are?
Sure, great questions. First of all, yes, it is the same at a business. It is, I know a business isn't public property, but it is in a public space. And the other thing too is like, unless you've gamed this out weeks in advance, which I encourage you to do, but unless you've gamed this out weeks in advance, like, hey, don't go in that freezer or you can't go in there. Doesn't, like, if an ICE agent heard that, they'd be like, oh, well, we're definitely going in there. I mean, like that's the sort of thing. There are many ways to achieve all different kinds of spatial situations for folks. But I would not, if an ICE agent tried to, come into my house, I would not say, oh, don't look in the attic or don't look in the, I mean, like that's right. Like, that's the sort of thing that you have to really be careful of. And this is again, why like remaining calm, recording, that sort of thing. If you have undocumented people, and I know food assistants, I will answer some of the other questions in just a second, but I know food assistants folks, especially in healthcare workers, which I have a lot of on the call and I'm grateful for. You don't have to ask people their status to ask them if they have a family preparedness plan. You don't have, I am working with our family, my family, I'm a 6th generation American. So I've been here, my family's been here a while, and we have a family preparedness plan. right? Like these are things that you should be talking about. I also will share in the chat. I have it open on my computer here. The Connecticut government, to its credit, has a family preparedness plan document. It is also our family preparedness plan is, guess where? In the immigrants' rights and resources document that we have on the website. But there is one from the Connecticut government I'm putting in the chat now. And it has things like making sure that you have guardianship documents in place in case you're afraid of family separation and things like that. I can go into very stark detail about what those plans look like, and we can have another Zoom for those plans if we need to. But
Yes.
I would, regardless of your status, I would, the probate court cannot ask you your status and will not ask you your status. And so I would encourage anyone, no matter who they are, to go to the probate court and have power of attorney documents, guardianship documents for family members, and things like that on the books.
And I will say what we've suggested to people, many people have a landscaper working for them or someone who comes to clean their house. We've suggested that they print several of these out in English, Spanish, Portuguese, Haitian, all the different languages that are out there, and just leave them around the house.
Yes.
You know, bring them to the food truck. Say, you know, if you happen to know anybody who.
So I want to make sure we, thank you,
Sorry.
Carol, and B, definitely.
Yes.
I just want to make sure we leave time for John,
John.
because the other important thing is to become involved in your local, especially immigrant-led immigrant rights groups. John Jairo Lugo is here from Unidad Latina and Accion, one of many amazing groups across the state. Unidad Latina is a grassroots organization that's been a leading force for justice for immigrants from around the world for over 20 years. They educate, they empower, they're a leader in labor and housing rights, as well as deportation. During the pandemic, they also translated COVID materials to Spanish for the city and handed out Tylenol and masks to families who had COVID. And so, John, how can we turn up for immigrants in our own backyards?
Okay, so as you mentioned, we're not the only one. You know, there is many organizations all around the state, but specifically, like in New Haven, we have been developed like a plan of action. Since like the first administration of Donald Trump, we had several confrontations with agents in the different courthouses. So at this moment, we have around like 1,000 members, you know, undocumented people in my organization, but we're recruiting volunteers who are willing to work with us, you know, like to provide accompaniment to many of these folks, because many of them, you know, they had to go to the immigration court or to the criminal court, and that's one of the issues that we're like, we're aware that that's where the people that are going to be detained, you know, that's like one of these, I don't know, the likely place where they're going to be detained is like the courthouses. So if you're willing to work with us, you know, we have meetings every Monday at 7 p.m. We have several members from our organization, and also we need, you know, like when we ask for protection for our community, we lean on volunteers, you know, like people who they have the privilege to be like an American citizens. So we need you, you know, we need you to come in and just to meet with our community and like to be volunteer, you know. At this moment, we have a hotline, you know, like people can call our hotline in New Haven and the greater New Haven area. They can call us and the idea is if we receive like an emergency call from a family, we will send people to provide support for that family or for the person who is getting detained by the immigration. We also like today we're having a training and it's called the Red Carpet project, and it's basically like teaching people how they can have their documents ready just in case they got detained by the immigration. But it's important for somebody who is in the house or like to how to get to the file, and access those documents that the people they should be using for like defend themselves, to for example, to get like the right to have to get a bond or to to fight or to stop the deportation, so that's us. Wait, I forgot something, I say that our emergency number is just for the greater New Haven area. The other areas in Connecticut, like we had 8 different districts, that they don't have those. So we're in the process to other organizations to do that. So if you live in another parts of the state, it will be important, maybe to start developing your own hotline, to provide support for your community. Thank you.
Yeah, so we mentioned earlier that this is a marathon, it's not a sprint. That also means that a lot of these other amazing groups from around the state have been getting prepared, but they're not necessarily ready to go. So get in touch with them, make sure you're on email lists, follow them on Facebook or wherever. If you take a shot of this, it will show you some of the resources. In addition, turn up. Show up for your neighbors. So there's a rally on Saturday. Oh, actually Saturday morning. Make the road.
It's Monday.
Wait. Well, there's
okay.
several.
Okay.
There's several. So that's the thing. Plug in. So in Hartford, there's a training on Saturday at 10 a.m. and that's a court accompaniment training. We've had high school kids show up for a traffic ticket, and ICE agents are on the steps saying, "Hey, Mario." And when the kid turns his head, he gets taken away to, a high school kid being taken to a prison with adults in Massachusetts. So that just means if we want to have justice in our communities, we want people to show up for court. We need to just show up for, sign up to support people who have court appointments. Also Saturday in New London, there's a rally. Again, just show up if you can. We're not going backwards. It's called Attorney General William Tong is going to be there. On Monday in New Haven, instead of watching whatever might be on TV that day, and also in honor of Martin Luther King Jr., there's going to be a rally at City Hall to stop the Trump agenda, or to just show force that we're going to stand together. It's for immigrants. It's for Muslims. It's for any marginalized group that will likely be targeted. Sunday, February 9th at 1 p.m., we're having the ACLU at Connecticut Shoreline Indivisible. That's at the Guilford Community Center. So again, the whole point is, show up, align yourself with like-minded people that share your values. And, let's do this. Let's stand shoulder to shoulder. We're stronger together. So
I just want to say one comment. A few slides ago, you were showing Facebook groups. I would be very cautious about sharing private information or gathering information as to exactly where and when. And by all means, speak if you're involved with the undocumented communities, be very clear. One is you don't want to take any photos that potentially include people who are being put at risk. That's a real problem. Even if you try to crop the photo, metadata can be pulled as to who are these people and where are they. But I would also be just very cautious about sharing much of anything on Facebook. We've already watched that get blown around an abortion seeker, where Facebook ultimately gave the information and the kid got picked up, as did the mother. So I would just be very, very cautious about what you share on social media in general, but certainly on Facebook. Just, sorry, parting comment about Facebook.
all right. I guess
I can, if there's any other questions, I'm happy to stay on and answer any. If you all have a few more minutes, I'm happy to stay on and answer questions. We can be general or specific, whatever is needed. I had a couple of questions about, there was one that was like, is it legal to track ICE movements? That is not the question I would ask. The question that I would ask is, who is tracking ICE movements and where can I find that? Government transparency and accountability is a democratic value and a democratic norm, and we see it eroded more and more. But I certainly think that there are ways, and I think there will be people that are very vocal about sort of where these federal agencies show up. Are there any other questions? I think, and then there was a question at the beginning, Jeffrey, let me scroll back up if I can find it. I think it was a question about are municipalities doing anything, or can we have them do anything? The ACLU has 50 pages of guidance called Cities of Light that we're providing to municipal folks that have things like, start these sort of commissions or start totally. I will tell you, Signal is a safe and protected way to communicate to a point. It can be subpoenaed. Just FYI.
Oh.
Anything on your phone can be subpoenaed. FYI. I use Signal, I use text, I use it all, but just FYI, you should also know that like devices are what gets subpoenaed. So they do have a disappearing message thing, but you should just know anything that you create digitally does not disappear. But if there's other folks who are still on the call, so if there's any other questions, I can talk about immigration, Signal versus text versus Facebook, like any of those questions, anything that you all have. But the thing I will tell you is Tabitha was also, I don't know if she's still on the call, but Tabitha is the executive director of Connecticut Students for a Dream, and it was on the call and shared some resources. And we are taking a lot of guidance from them and working very closely with them, like several times a day. We work with them on not only Trust Act strengthening, but other things. Yes, Clementina.
People can't actually speak because we did this to prevent Zoom bombing, so you have to type your questions.
Right.
Is it legal for an employer or colleagues to call ICE on their employee? Very good question. I will tell you that the Lake and Riley Act, if it passes,
Right.
Is a very deleterious thing for anyone that if anyone has a grievance with an undocumented person, it seems like they could be sort of arrested. So again, the question I wouldn't ask, is it legal? Because regardless, you should be consulting with lawyers, but it would be what happens if an employer or a person that has a grievance with an undocumented person reports them. That is like, it's a person can call a federal agency and say just about anything they want, right? Like I could call a federal agency and say happy birthday and hang up. I mean, like you can, there aren't a lot of protections as far as that goes, and what does exist, we expect will sort of be destroyed Monday morning.
However, there's power on the streets, so become involved with your local immigrant rights groups. I mean, there's certainly, I know of several groups that have actively shamed people who should not have been doing things that they're doing.
Correct.
And so
Correct.
that's where you have the power of the people.
Correct. And I will tell you one thing that is true on all sides of the political spectrum, from people that care about democracy to absolute tyrants, is they tend to respond to political pressure and public pressure. So it can seem really trite and it can seem like you're not doing anything, but calling, emailing, really calling is the thing that we say, but really, and being as vocal as possible. Now, if you're undocumented or you have people that are at risk, right, you have to make that risk calculus. That's why we talked about that in the civil society section. But for people like most of us on the call, like yelling very loud about something until something changes is a way to get something done. It's not like it's not easy. It takes a long time. But when we all do it together, voices tend to multiply.
Amen.
And
somebody in the chat had asked about churches and, as far as ICE invading them or what they should do. Is it different for churches or no?
So churches, again, are, even though they are owned by someone and ostensibly private property, like owned by a nonprofit functionally, they are that is in a public place. Right now, there are some places, some municipalities and some places where ICE cannot go into churches. And again, we anticipate by Monday morning that not being the case. So that's the guidance I'm giving you, is sort of the worst case scenario, because in 5 days, that's what we will have. But I do think that the faith community is one that has some really unique ability to make a difference here. And I think first of all, having faith and standing in that faith and having faith in the world is a thing that we all need to be doing. And also making sure that we're joining in our faith communities and looking out for those that are the most marginalized and the most at risk in our society, because of the nonprofit status and because they sit in a different space than like the nonprofit I work for, right? There are some things there that people can do, but functionally you should assume that ICE will avail themselves of any spaces. It's very
Jeffrey was asking earlier about the firewall. I mean, one of the things about being in a progressive state like Connecticut, I mean, we've got the ACLU in force. There's 17 full-time employees. We've got a ton of networks of immigrant-led immigrant rights groups. And then, of course, we have all the ally groups. And we also have fairly progressive media, journalists, and elected officials. So the way we've used that as a firewall, I mean, under Trump 1, we found out some guy contacted the hotline through Unidad Latina and said, I'm at the courthouse and ICE is here to get me. And then out of nowhere, all of these white allies showed up, and people who, we didn't even know this guy's name. People just showed up. We had faith leaders with collars on. We contacted the media. We contacted legislators. You know, basically just, I mean, maybe legally ICE could have taken that guy. But with all of us standing there videotaping and some of us in the background coordinating, I mean, basically we just shamed them. I mean, they're going to behave a little differently if they see that there is a firewall and that this is our community and we're going to stand up for them.
And that's the difference in being an advocate, an ally, and then an accomplice. That's when you become an accomplice, is when you really join forces around folks for that. There was another question about ICE showing up at like a neighbor's house to like ask questions or whatever. It's happened. It's the same protocol. Don't talk, have them slide the warrant under the door. There's not, and a lot of times people want to do something, right? And the guidance is to not do a thing. And so it can feel counterintuitive, but that is the best way to get legal recourse. I've also seen a question about what happens to people if they're taken away. And this is why families should have the phone numbers of lawyers and folks that are in that guide that we do, or get in touch with us or whatever. But a lawyer can typically find out where they've been. That it takes some time. It takes some time. But if we know where, I mean, movement is a thing that can be tracked, right? So if we know where people are being taken, like whether it's Rhode Island or Texas, South Texas, or there's lots of places that they can be taken once they are found. And especially, this is the other reason to practice that resolve, right? Because if you were taken and detained somewhere and get bullied into signing something, it's much harder to get you back home. And so that is where practicing this resolve is our number one thing. I was on the phone till very late last night with some folks of sensitive status, and just trying to help their families, and that is the coaching I give you is just be quiet. And that is not what anyone wants to do. And and they will try everything and the whole point is to poke and provoke and manipulate and do all the things, and to get you to giving up your rights and to put you in a tough situation. And that is what we are hoping, that folks can have that resolve. It's very, very difficult. Very, very difficult, but possible. Can ACLU offer digital security trainings for activists? Would love that. Megan, can you just email me? And yes, we can absolutely do that. And I will tell you also, we are working on some data privacy bills specifically related to immigration, but also related to data privacy in general and reproductive rights as well, here in Connecticut, this legislative session. Yours truly is on the legislative writing committee. So we'll see how it goes, but we're optimistic. How do state employees resist ICE from entering schools? Yeah, I mean, in New Haven, they say to call the New Haven lawyer. It really depends on the school district, and what the school district's posture is going to be. I work at a nonprofit and don't work for school districts or for the government, but if I were in their position, I would have some type of a training that says here's who you call. The whole point is this calling tree. This is why we want people to feel connected, and why it's great to have meetings like this, having a call tree, having emails, knowing who to sort of get to when things happen. But for school districts, it would be best to call the school district's lawyer, because also children are in schools, right? And so these are minors. And so there's a whole different legal landscape there. For immigration, it's not a great deal, but there's an entirely different legal landscape there, and different safety concerns, but that it is public property, right? And so that's one of the issues. And then I've seen questions about sanctuary businesses or churches. So we at the ACLU typically, like, we love sanctuary measures. Using the word sanctuary can be inflammatory or what. I mean, like, use the word, it's fine. I mean, like, do what you need to do, but what our guidance, the reason we call our municipal guidance cities of light and not sanctuary cities is because we it's the same guidance, but we don't use the word sanctuary. And it's because we then that sort of it's like saying don't look in the freezer. You know what I mean? Like, don't look in the, whatever. So many immigrants are at risk of having their TPS revoked. Yes, my suggestion for folks that are worried about TPS is that it's not a, I don't know that I would have a suggestion for them much more than we do anticipate that TPS statuses will be revoked. There are some lists coming out with in the 7 figures of folks that are that we know are at direct risk. And I can't speak super publicly about all of that, but we are monitoring that. And it is certain groups that have TPS status at certain nationalities as well. And those number in the thousands. And we are working on figuring out in New England, sort of where those people are and what kind of risk they will be, that they will have. But my advice to anyone that has any kind of, including birthright, like, this is the problem, is like they will strip it citizenship status from people that were born in this country. So, like, these are not people that, like, are logical about what, like, how they're going to discriminate against people, right? So I mean, we are really seeing the sort of dark time, like the darkest of the dark times here. And so anybody that has any type of, and even for anybody that's an immigrant or not immigrant, you should have a birth certificate. You should have it in triplicate if you can. It costs money and takes a little time, but, like, these are things that you should have, and you should really, this is, again, a time where we have to rely on one another. And we have been particularly atomized, right? We all scroll on our phones. We text instead of get together. We do all these things, but this is exactly why coming together is so important. Listening to people like Darla and Susan and Carol and Kica and John is really important. Any groups in southeastern Connecticut currently tracking ICE movements? I mean, the thing about tracking ICE movement, I don't know. Like, you will know, like, they're everywhere, but also, like, we know how many people work for ICE. I think it's like 10,000 or something now, like, or maybe less than that. And, like, I think that like people will have to be hired and trained, and that, like, these are government agents, like, yes, it's scary and it's terrible, but these are also government agencies that move at the pace of government, even though we know they can move at an accelerated pace. So just know, I don't want to say don't worry about it. But I want to say that as long as you are paying attention and continuing to search for those types of things and talk to people that keep track of that, we anticipate that we will have about 48 hours notice before there's any type of big, large scale raid. Now, there may be 5 ICE agents that come to town that do 2 raids at 2 places. I mean, that is a thing that is very real. But we are also trying to track all of that as well. The Immigrants' Rights Guide is getting translated into Spanish now. Yes, to Pim, who sent that, and that will be on the website before inauguration. And I have a couple of things in Spanish I can probably send over as well. Pim, can you put your email in the chat and I can send it to you? And but we'll blast it out on socials. That's where you would call to report a sighting. Yeah. Yep. Yep, you can report ICE sightings. That's exactly right. Anything else? Any other questions, comments, funny stories?
So, I mean, I think it looks like people will continue to have some questions. We just keep putting B's email address, and she is incredibly accessible. I think if we could just close on a note of hope, B, from the very first time I talked to you, you instilled a lot of hope in me by talking about how, as horrible as things are, the state of Connecticut is the place to be. People are looking at us for, what we're going to do. So if you can close us off on an inspirational note, that would be great. You have to be unmuted though.
Sure. This is my line I tell everyone. Oh yeah, this is my line that I tell everyone. I'm from Waco, Texas originally, and then lived in Washington, D.C. And I was in Waco for 25 years and then moved to Washington, D.C. I've lived other places as well. But from a functionality perspective, Connecticut is a place that gives me hope. It does. But because I'm from Waco, and because I've seen a lot of this country, I've lived in California, I've lived all over this country. And when Abraham Lincoln was remaking the country after the Civil War, he looked to Connecticut and to the states around Connecticut to find a model of a functioning society of decent people that could be replicated from sea to shining sea. So the place where you put your feet every day, 150, 60, we're all getting older, years ago, right? But it wasn't that long ago, right? The place where you put your feet every day is the place that the government that freed the slaves and tried to remake this country in a better vision of itself. That is the ground that we are walking on now. And if we can't hold the line, if we can't show up for each other, and if we can't move the line forward, this is why I'm aggressive when I go in the legislature, right? If we can't move the line forward, we can't expect anyone else to. So it has to be us. It has to be the people on this call. It has to be our families and our communities. There's no other, we have to win. The fight just got longer and it got a lot grosser, is what I hate saying that. But the reason that we have hope is because we have to. The reason that we do this is because we have to win. There isn't another option. It will take a long time. It will take all of us, and it will take all of our different specialized talents. But the ground that we walk on every day is the ground that saved this country and that provided the model for, 1860 until now, and we can do it again.
So
that's all I got.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Appreciate everybody for showing up. Let's continue to show up. Find your local organizers, find your local immigrant rights groups, and let's bend the arc of moral justice. Bend the moral arc towards justice.
Thank you all for coming.
Thank you. Thank you, CFAN, CTSI. Take care, everyone. Thank you, B.
Thank you for organizing it all, Carla. Thank you, of course, B, Susan, everyone else who's here. Thank you for everything.
Thank you.